New York, the autumn of 1857, the first American Chess Congress, the young country's very first great tournament, and at its center a gentle, brilliant 20-year-old from New Orleans named Paul Morphy. Across the board sits Louis Paulsen, a thoughtful German player, famous for thinking very, very slowly, and this is their final game, played to decide first place. If a quiet game like this is how you'd like to fall asleep, take a moment to subscribe. There's a new one each week. This is the game remembered for one of the most beautiful queen sacrifices ever played. Paul Morphy had come up from New Orleans almost out of nowhere. In a few short weeks, he had beaten every strong player the country could field. He was not even a professional. He was a young lawyer, too young yet to practice, simply waiting out the months until he came of age. And chess filled the waiting. Across from him, Louis Paulsen, a German who had settled in the American Midwest, a man who could sit an hour over a single move and never lose the thread of it. This was the romantic age of chess, when a player gave up material gladly for the sake of a beautiful attack, and a slow, grinding win was almost bad manners. The two of them had risen above the rest of the field, and this last game would settle who stood first. So the hall leaned in, expecting fireworks. What it got, at first, was patience. And the moves they were about to see would travel ahead of the young man all the way to Europe, where the great masters were waiting to be challenged. For a long while, nothing seems to happen. The pieces simply gather, quietly, in the center. And then Morphy does something astonishing. He gives away his queen. Not a loud sacrifice, not forcing, just deep and patient and sure. They say Paulsen sat and thought for more than an hour before he dared to take it. Slowly the bishops and rooks close in and the win takes shape. It helped make young Morphy famous across the world. Black is Morphy, white is Paulsen. Let it unfold slowly. Close your eyes now and let the board take shape in the dark before you. White moves first, and the first move is the oldest one there is. The king's pawn steps forward 2 squares to e4. Black answers in kind. A pawn to e5, square against square in the middle of the board. 2 pawns, face to face, neither able to take the other. The game leans on them like a hinge. White brings out a knight to f3, leaning on the black pawn at e5. Black defends it the simplest way, a knight to c6. Now white calls up the second knight to c3. And black mirrors him, a knight to f6. 4 knights out, 2 on each side, the position even and unhurried. White reaches for a bishop and sets it on b5, the long, slanting pin, against the knight on c6. Black does not flinch into defense. The dark bishop swings out to c5, pointing across the board toward white's castled corner to come. A colder, modern eye slightly prefers a small knight thrust here instead, but the bishop, aimed across at the empty corner, is the move of a player who already smells the attack. See it for a moment. Both sides developed, both kings still in the center, every piece looking outward. White castles, king to g1, rook to f1. The king tucks behind its pawns. Black castles too, the same side, king to g8. 2 kings now in their corners, the board open and ready between them. And here white makes his first real decision. The knight on f3 takes the pawn on e5. A pawn won. It looks like simple profit. But notice what it lets go of. The bishop on b5 no longer holds the same threat, and the center begins to breathe. Black does not hurry to take the knight back. Instead, the rook lifts to e8 onto the open file and stares straight down it. Look along that line. The black rook on e8, the white knight on e5, and behind it the white pawn on e4. The rook pins the knight against the pawn in a quiet way. The knight has nowhere comfortable to go. White resolves it by trading. The knight on e5 takes the knight on c6. Black recaptures, but with the d-pawn taking back on c6. A small thing, easy to pass over, but it matters. Black's pawns on the queen side are doubled now, 2 of them stacked on the c-file. In return, the centre has opened, and the rook on e8 breathes down a clear road at the white pawn on e4. And the bishop pair stays in black's hands, both bishops alive, both with long diagonals ahead of them. It is now seen as a small concession. White could have kept that knight on the board, slipping it quietly home instead of trading it away. By taking, he hands black the 2 things he most wants: an open road through the centre, and both bishops left alive on their long diagonals. White retreats the bishop from b5 to c4, eyeing the soft square at f7 by the black king. It is now seen as a misstep. The plain retreat, straight back to e2, would have left white with nothing to fret over. On c4, the bishop only invites the very pawn that is about to chase it, and loses a step in the chasing. Black pushes a pawn to b5, shoving the bishop away and gaining a step. It feels brisk, and it is, but here the truest path lay elsewhere. The sharper move was a knight leap to g4, swinging the knight toward white's king before chasing the bishop at all. That knight, hovering near f2 and h2, would have set white real problems to solve. The pawn push is fine, only slower. A small loosening, a half breath given back. White slides the bishop back again, from c4 to e2, out of the pawn's reach. And now, black strikes in the centre. The knight on f6 takes the pawn on e4. The pawn white had pocketed is paid straight back. The material is level again. But look closer. This capture is the door swinging open. The black knight sits on e4, and behind it, on the same file, the rook still waits on e8. White must answer it. His own knight on c3 takes the intruder, on e4. And the rook comes down the file to recapture. Rook takes on e4. Feel how black's pieces are pouring toward the center, one after another, down that single open lane. The rook now stands boldly on e4, deep in white's half of the board. White meets it with the bishop from e2 to f3, attacking the rook and claiming the long diagonal at once. That bishop leans across the board past c6, all the way toward the far corner. It is his best try, the one piece doing real work, and yet that single bishop is most of white's plan, while black's pieces keep arriving. The rook steps back, but not far, only to e6, still on the file, still watching. It is a patient retreat. The rook holds the open line and keeps its choices wide. White plays a small, sturdy pawn move, c2 to c3, building a little wall and making room. And now comes the move that gives this game its hush. The black queen leaves her home and drops deep into white's position, all the way to d3. No capture, no check, just a queen planted in the heart of the enemy camp. Sit with where she sits. From d3 she touches the back rank pathways and the soft squares around white's king. She freezes white in place. Pieces that want to move find her watching the squares they would step to. This is the quiet kind of move that wins games, not loud, just suffocating. Modern analysis is fond of this square. The queen attacks nothing, and yet she ties white's whole house together. From d3 she watches the bishop's road home, the squares where the rooks would like to land, the soft holes around the king. Whatever white reaches for, her shadow is already on it. That is why so little of his army can stir at all. White feels the squeeze and tries to push back on the far wing, a pawn to b4, nudging the dark bishop. Black simply slides the bishop one square back, from c5 to b6, keeping the same long aim at white's corner. Look at that bishop on b6. Its diagonal runs clean across the board toward g1, toward the king. White keeps expanding on the queen side, a pawn forward to a4, prodding at the black b-pawn. And black takes, the b-pawn captures on a4, opening lines on the very side where white had hoped to grow. The position is wound tight now, like a held breath, and it is white who must find a way to loosen it. The white queen slips all the way across the board and takes the little pawn on a4. It looks like nothing more than a free pawn, one far from the king's. Black answers softly. The light bishop steps from c8 to d7. A quiet move, but not the best one. On b7, the bishop would have looked straight down the long diagonal toward the white king. Instead, it sits on d7, its own pawn on c6 blocking the view. White loosens the grip a touch as well. The rook lifts from a1 to a2, guarding the second rank. The sharper path was simply the queen to a6, pressing at once. Black brings the other rook into the fight, a8 to e8. Now both black rooks stand on the e-file, one behind the other, staring up the board. Picture it for a moment. The white king on g1, tucked behind three pawns, f2, g2, h2. His queen far away on a4, and only the bishop on f3 near home. Black's queen sits deep on d3, the rooks doubled on the e-file, the dark bishop on b6 eyeing the diagonal to g1. Everything of black's looks toward the white king, everything of white's looks away. The white queen advances, a4 to a6. She leans on the black bishop on b6, busy with her own errand, and leaves the king side to fend for itself. It is now seen as the wrong errand. The truer path kept the queen close to her own king, where the storm was already gathering. Instead, she is the whole length of the board away, chasing a bishop, while the door behind her stands open. And here black plays the move this game is remembered for. The queen from d3 takes the bishop on f3. No check, no shout. Just a queen laid quietly against a pawn. If white were to look away, the queen would have won a piece outright, and the king's cover would start to crack. But the capture begs to be answered. The pawn on g2 can take her. And white takes, g2 takes f3. The greatest piece on the board, given up for a bishop and a pawn. Modern analysis confirms what Morphy saw by feel alone. This is the strongest move on the board, and it is already winning. The point was never the bishop she takes. The point is the pawn beside the king, which must capture her in return. Had white somehow left the queen alone, she would simply have carried off a piece and kept her place deep in his camp. So the pawn takes, and in taking, it steps off the file in front of its own king and tears the last cover away. But look what the capture has done. The g-file is torn open, straight to the white king on g1. And a black rook is already waiting to use it. It swings from e6 to g6. Check. This was the whole idea, folded inside the gift. The queen was given so that this rook could reach the open lane to the king. The king has no shelter on the open file. He hurries into the corner G1 to H1. Now the second bishop joins from D7 all the way to H3. It stands one step from G2, and the threats begin to gather around the cornered king. White reaches back for help. The rook from F1 to D1. A small misstep. Better to have hurried the queen home to D3 to defend. It is now seen as the moment White could have clung on a little longer by hurrying the queen back to defend the very squares the bishop is reaching for. Black does not wait. The bishop drops onto G2, check. The king steps off the corner, back to G1. And now the quiet machine begins to turn. The bishop takes the pawn on F3, and as it moves, check. For stepping off, G2 opens the file once more, and the rook on G6 strikes the king behind it. A discovered check. The bishop captures. The rook checks, both in the same breath. The king slides away to F1. The bishop follows him. F3 to G2. Check again. Back to G1 goes the king. And the bishop lifts to H3. And again the rook behind it checks. Another discovered check. The king is rocked from square to square like a boat on slow water. He has answered every check, yet he is no safer than before. This is the part that men copied out by hand and carried across the ocean. A king walked from square to square and never once let free. Into the corner once more, king to H1. Now, the dark bishop, the one that has waited all this time on B6, comes crashing in. He takes the pawn on F2. Two bishops now, deep in the white camp, one on F2, one on H3, and the king sealed in his corner. There was an even quicker way, a check on G2 first, but it changes little. White is grasping for any defender at all. The queen finally races home, the whole length of the board, a 6 to F1. She guards the squares about her king and offers herself to hold the line. It is the only move that breathes at all, and modern analysis agrees there is nothing better, only a slower way to lose. Black accepts. The bishop on H3 takes the queen on F1. And the rook on D1 takes the bishop back on F1. When the dust clears, both queens are gone. But count the field, and black has the greater army, 2 rooks, a bishop and pawns to spare. And the white king still stands alone in the corner on H1. Black tightens the net. A rook comes down to E2, onto the second rank. White's rook slides quietly home, a 2 back to A1. And the other black rook swings across, G6 to H6. Now it points straight down the H file at the king. See the whole board as it stands. The white king pinned in the corner on H1, a single pawn on H2 before him. His rooks far off on A1 and F1, his last bishop asleep on C1, pawns on B4, C3, D2. And black, his king untouched all game, resting on G8. A rook on H6 bearing down the H file, a rook on E2 along the second rank, a bishop on F2 holding the dark squares by the king. Everything aimed at one small pocket of air around the white king. White pushes a pawn, D2 to D4, hoping to wake the sleeping bishop on C1 and send it to the defense. It is the last hope, and black closes the door on it. The bishop slides from F2 to E3. Quiet again, no check. Just a bishop, coming to rest on one square. But that one square decides everything. Consider the position. By leaving F2, The bishop clears the whole second rank for the rook on e2. Now that rook guards the pawn on h2 and the square right beside the king. And from e3, the bishop covers g1, the king's only door out of the corner. So picture the blow that is coming. The rook on h6 takes the pawn on h2, and that is check. The king cannot take the rook back. The other rook, on e2, guards that square along the rank. He cannot flee to g1. The bishop on e3 holds it shut. He cannot slip to g2. Both black men cover it. There is no piece to throw in the way, and no square to hide in. That capture on h2 is mate, and against it white has no answer. And the bishop on e3, set down without a sound, is what makes it so. The whole storm, the queen given away, the king hunted corner to corner, comes to rest on this one silent square. A queen sacrificed not with a roar, but with a whisper. They say Paulsen needed the better part of an hour to take that queen, and at the end of it could find nothing better than to take. Within the year, the game had crossed to Europe, and the name New Orleans had given the world began to mean something to every player alive. And the mate that follows arrives the same way. The white king stands in his corner with nowhere left to go. The board is still now. The pieces have said all they mean to say. It is finished. Let it rest there, just as it is. The shape of it all loosens, the lines going quiet. The board fades, square by square, until there is only the dark. Good night.